to get in there and vote and keep them from voting. And by tying that to being able to show up for 45 days before the election to show your identification, get your ballot, and vote for no reason, uh, it may very well alleviate some of those lines that you would otherwise be having. And I think that the no reason absentee voting is something that they do in many other states, in many different versions. If you take a look at the average line in Michigan, typically it's about 22 minutes, is my understanding, as a statewide average. I think we do better here in Calhoun County. Ann, how do we do in Calhoun County, if I may ask?
Well, I'm always pleased when there's a line because that means there's some interest in the election.
Right.
The city elections turned out 9%. So I, for one, don't mind standing in line to do my greatest privilege as an American.
Sure.
Even back in '88 when I first ran for election, I think I stood in line probably for the longest amount of time and enjoyed every minute of it. You get to know your neighbors. You can, renew acquaintances, and you have time to study your ballot.
Some of my neighbors are election workers. You're chatting with them while you're waiting, yeah. So when you first heard this, Ann, eliminate straight party ticket voting, what's the first thing you think of? Oh, boy, there's going to be long lines, or, yeah, that makes things easier? I mean, what was your response?
I like the proposal that it's tie-barred to no reason absent voter.
Okay.
And you can go to your local clerk to do this. And I have read in some of the comments that have been made over this proposal that, everybody has to go to their local clerks to vote, and that's not true. There's 5 reasons why anyone can be on a permanent list for AVs. Over 60, religious beliefs, inability to get to the polls, out of town, or you're incarcerated but have not been charged with a crime.
So you could go and, if this passes, you could go and say, I want to be an absentee voter without giving a reason, and you are, and is that permanent then?
No. If you don't meet those qualifications, then you can go to your local clerk and present your ID and vote an AV ballot.
Okay.
So that gives everyone the opportunity to vote AV. However, I think our state rep sitting next to me will tell you what the possibility of that happening might be.
And he's waving at me, so he's ready to.
I was just wanting to make the point earlier that, and I didn't want to interrupt anyone, but I just wanted to make the point that all of the reasons for permanent absentee voting continue to exist, and so if you are currently receiving a permanent absentee ballot, you will continue to do so under this proposal. It will not be another encumbrance upon you.
Okay. When we come back in a minute, we'll talk about what might have motivated this whole thing, and that's in just a minute on WBCK 816 WBCK. Clerk and Norlander's here, and Representative Dr. John Bizon with us. We're talking about the straight party ticket potential elimination and no reason absentee voting. It occurs to me that as we were chatting during the break, maybe we need to be clearer about exactly what's going on and exactly what the proposal is. So, Ann, right now, somebody can go get a ballot on Election Day and click Republican or Democrat, and it chooses all of those candidates in that party on that ballot automatically.
That is correct in a general election.
Correct.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, the proposal then, Dr. Bizon, is to eliminate that box. So if you wanted to vote straight party, you've got to go down and click all of your candidates in that ballot, correct?
That is my understanding as well, Richard.
Okay. So what's the reason behind this? Why would we want to eliminate that step, that one click, one punch step?
I think there are those who think that voters ought to look at the individual candidates and assess each of the candidates and say, yes, this is a good candidate. This is someone who respects my beliefs. This is somebody who will that I want to have in office, rather than just saying I'm just going to click everyone who is Republican or everyone who is Democratic. I have to admit that I heard a lot from the people in our district regarding this issue, and they were very much in favor of having that one box, and that's the reason that I voted to retain the ability for people to be able to vote that straight ticket if they wanted to. And it's pointing out that even though you click that box, you can still split your ballot and not have a spoiled ballot. And I'll let her address that, if I may.
Yeah, so just to confuse us a little more with these complications. So right now, you can click the one party or the other and then still go down and choose a candidate of the opposing party.
That's correct. That's called splitting your ticket.
Yeah.
And most people, I would say 9 out of 10 citizens that I speak with have no idea you can do that.
Right. Well, why would you want to, though? I mean, if you click all Republican or all Democrat, why would you then go down and choose someone who isn't?
Well, they may like the way Ann Norlander does her job. or anyone. I mean, if you voted straight the Republican box and you thought, the county drain commissioner or water resources director was doing an outstanding job,
right,
or your state representative, it gives people that option, but most people do not know that.
Right. So it still eliminates extra steps is the point. You can say most of the Republicans on the ballot I want to vote for except for this one, and I can hit the straight party and then go down and choose that one Democrat if I wanted to.
Right. It's programmed that way. We have, in the last presidential, it was a 6-foot spreadsheet that took care of every scenario that every voter might vote.
Oh, gracious. Boy, and you have to keep track of all that.
It
wow.
is a complicated process, and it begins this afternoon with the Election Commission being seated, comprised of the probate judge, the county clerk, and the county treasurer. We will be reviewing bids for ballots, and we'll be underway for the March 8th presidential primary as opposed to the general primary.
Yeah, so, that's a whole other conversation that we're going to try and squeeze in here, the difference between the primary and the general. The straight party ticket issue in focus right now has to do with general election voting, of course. In the primary, you're generally choosing between one party or another. You're asking for one party's ballot or the other.
Right, and in the presidential primary, there will be 2 ballots. Depending upon how many proposals there are, some jurisdictions may get up to 3 ballots.
Yeah, and
or
just
4 ballots.
And just as an aside, if you're ordering your ballots now, as are clerks all across the country, we presume, and if somebody drops out of the race between now and the day of the primary, their name's still going to be there because it's been printed there.
That's correct.
Yeah. When we come back in a minute, we'll talk about the difference between the Senate version and the House version of this, which is another wrinkle in all of this. And that's when we come back in just a second on WBCK 820. Right now, we're talking with Calhoun County Clerk Ann Norlander and Representative Dr. John Bizon about the straight party ticket, absentee, no reason voting. So the original Senate version of this, Doctor, is different than the House version. How so?
Well, the Senate bill only dealt with the elimination of the straight ticket voting issue. On the House side, we have a separate House bill that was initiated, and that is the bill that deals with the no reason absentee voting. And since we have a brand new House bill that hasn't been seen yet by the Senate, when we get done with it, as we have, it has passed through, it'll be on its way back to the Senate for their consideration. And they'll have the opportunity to amend it. They'll have the opportunity to vote it up or down. And at that point, they may very well send it to a conference committee that they'll have people assigned to come up with the bill and come up with a consensus as to where we are going.
Hammer out the differences.
Exactly.
Now, apparently, the majority leader in the Senate, Arlen Meekhoff, doesn't like the no reason absentee attachment that the House has made to this. So I suppose that's the big question, is whether or not that part would survive.
I think that Representative Lyons did an excellent job in forming that bill, making sure that the voting is secure, and she was able to get this through a relatively conservative caucus. I was very supportive of the no reason absentee voting, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to prevail upon our Senate colleagues to say, yes, this is a good thing for the people of Michigan. This is going to enfranchise voters and empower them.
So if I've heard you, then the impetus behind this was let's make it. Let's help voters be more responsible in their choices. Instead of going in and just click Republican, click Democrat, be done, let's make them study their candidates and then go down the ballot, choose the ones that they think are best, and that's a more informed voter. Is that the impetus here?
I think that was the sentiment of the House.
Okay.
I did not join in that sentiment. I went on the other side of the issue
Based on
that
what you
particular
heard,
bill.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I heard from both Republicans and Democrats saying that they like the ability to do things just a little bit quicker. And so we were supportive of that effort.
Okay.
And I also like the absentee voting.
So Ann, if we take away the straight party option, are you concerned that you're going to have long lines?
Not particularly.
Okay.
Not horribly long lines if the average is 22 minutes. My philosophy is this. If you can pitch a tent in front of Best Buy for 3 days waiting for the Black Friday sales to get a big screen TV, 20 minutes in line to have the greatest privilege in the world to vote for our leaders, I think should take precedence over a big screen TV.
I think you'd probably have some folks agreeing with you on that. We're running out of time, but there's this whole political angle to this. What is your thought on that, Doctor? I mean, some say this may or may not advantage one party or another.
I think that in Republican areas, it may slightly disadvantage whichever the party in power, the party that is currently have a majority in that region. So in Republican areas, it's going to hurt some of the Republicans, and in Democratic areas, I think it has the potential to hurt some of the Democrats. And so, yes, it's going to swing both ways. This is a two-edged sword.
The notion being that if someone doesn't do their research, they might just come in and say, yep, all Republicans, or yep, all Democrats. Whereas if they have to study their candidates, there's potential that they'll change their mind about something.
Exactly correct. If you know who is running on either side, do your research, find out what their values are. You may very well decide that, wow, I didn't know that about this one, and maybe this other candidate better suits our values. And having an informed electorate, I feel, is always an advantage.
All right. You and I can talk more about your perspectives on this on Monday. And where are we now with, you say you're about to work on primary ballots here, so we're moving right along.
Presidential primary should have 14 candidates in the Republican ballot, if you ask for that, and 3 on the Democrat. If you want to give a great Christmas gift to anyone in your household 18 or over that isn't registered to vote, the close of registration for that election is, the last day would be February 8th.
Okay.
In Calhoun, we have a population of around 135,492, about 99,000 registered voters. So registering isn't our big issue. It's getting people to the polls and getting them educated. And it isn't only for candidates. On the backside, we'll have the judiciary, depending upon the length of the ballot, and the proposals.
Okay.
And I've been in the polls where I've heard people come in and didn't have a clue what was on that ballot. So we, Dr. Bizon and Norlander, we have a duty to continue to try to educate the public on the ballot and make sure that everyone that wants to vote is informed and makes good choices.
I guess we could do whole shows on that whole subject right there. Well, thanks to the both of you, County Clerk and Norlander, Representative Dr. John Bizon. Thank you very much for
Thank you,
today.
Richard.
Thank you.